Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We have still attendees coming into the room, so we'll give it a couple of minutes for everyone to gather around. Good morning, Philip. Okay, let's just start slowly and then we get to the core of the conversation in some minutes. But thanks again for joining us. Good morning. Welcome to our webinar on the battery energy storage system today. My name is Bozok Khanbai. I will be presenting and moderating the panel discussion today with our distinguished guest of the webinar. Let us start with the agenda itself. So we will start with a little bit of an introduction on the welcome boards about what is BEPA and what we do at the partnership and the association itself. We will go through a presentation for almost 15-20 minutes to just set the stage a little bit, warming up intellectually to see what is the state of the battery energy storage systems in Europe. And then we will have for 45-50 minutes a panel discussion, followed by a Q&A. And then we conclude with some announcements and some conclusions. Just a quick note, please feel free to leave your questions at any time in the Q&A. We try to answer them all as much as possible. But please don't hesitate to engage in the conversation and asking us what's on your mind. Okay, so a little bit about us. So who we are the association of the stakeholders in Europe trying to make a strong R&I battery community and a strong R&I battery future envisages for Europe itself. So we have some main and broader goals to make sure that the sector is competitive in Europe. It fits the agenda and the goal of the European Union and member states for a clean and affordable energy, followed by a non-toxic future. So many projects to make sure that we are moving toward a future that is as much as possible clean with every interpretation of that word. We are very much focused on giving Europe the technological autonomy toward the future of this very important sector. And of course, our primary goal and what is very much embedded in our philosophy of working is working toward the net zero future. So how we do that, just a little bit about how we conduct that purposes. We are at the private side of the BATT4EU partnership under Horizon Europe. So we are the co-driver and one of the main drivers of the partnership itself. If you're a BEPA member, you already know what that implies, but primarily to give the European Commission the agenda of the Horizon Europe work program, setting the stage for the future funding on the RNI with our strategic research and innovation agenda, supporting the European projects. But building on that expertise, and also again what comes around and adjacent to that activity is a lot of other purposes that we are following to really make sure that we have a coherent community of battery RNI stakeholders in Europe. We try to provide the technologies and take into consideration the needs for different sectors across different mobility modes and also stationary storage. We are very much industry oriented, meaning that what we define is something that we see as applicable to the industry and really taken over by the industrial sector in Europe. So we don't do research for the sake of research. As I mentioned, we set the priorities for in terms of technologies and in terms of the areas of focus for the European Union in terms of battery research, innovation, and first in the industrialization toward that goal of the first deployment under our strategic research and innovation agenda. And of course, we have our flagship event, which is called Battery Innovation Days. This is one of the leading strategic events for the battery sector in Europe. This year it will be in Graz in Austria in 2 and 3 of December. You're very much welcome to join us. Please look it up and register as soon as possible. I think the registration will open this week, but you can already pre-register and get the email of the notification. So let me start with the presentation. Just again, as I mentioned, just highlighting the main points about the topic of the today, and of course we will have a much more in-depth conversation with the panel. So the main theme I think here is to really resurface what has been the common understanding at the moment that the stationary storage sector for the batteries are getting really huge, and what should we adopt in principle in terms of our thinking, in terms of our policies, and in terms of our agenda about this really significant growth. So giving you a little bit of a scheme and the schematic of what is happening. So in 2017, and that's when the European Commission under the European Battery Alliance realized that it should really focus on the battery sector, really start to form this alliance of the stakeholders and put it on the top of the agenda in terms of the industries in the next decade. That was more or less the same that Northvolt was built, at least under the current name. And at that moment of appreciation and really initiation of the support from the EU, at least, the whole market was almost 150 gigawatt hour, and it was very predominantly the batteries, lithium-ion batteries for the EVs. And what we have now just in the stationary storage system is 200 gigawatt hours. So just showing you what is known in some circles as a marginal market. It's not really marginal. We have started a very much bigger effort for lower figures. But this still represents 15 to 20% of the total lithium-ion battery demand at the moment, which goes, as you know, the majority of it parts to the electric vehicles. So out of this 200 gigawatt hour, we have 15 to 20% are projects that are deployed in Europe. And we are talking about LFP mostly. So 80 to 85% of these projects are comprised by the lithium-ion batteries, and in particular chemistry called lithium iron phosphate, which I get later too, but provides many advantages. And as I mentioned, the sector is really growing rapidly. So we have almost 60% of year-on-year growth since 2021. So I cannot emphasize more that what a huge kind of a increase in the demand and in the supply of this sector is happening at the moment. And so the projection for this sector is very difficult, that I know, but we have rough figures at the moment to show us where we are heading to. In 2040, we're thinking about 30 to 50% of the demand of the lithium-ion battery will be dedicated to this sector. Again, we are talking about huge numbers. We are getting to the 3, 4, 5 terawatt hours of lithium-ion battery demand. So again, that shows us that we are heading to really not a marginal sector. But what is the state today? What we are experiencing at the moment as this boom is almost entirely because of one very specific technology. So as you know, over the past couple of years, after the very rapid rise in the cost of the lithium and consequently the batteries itself after the COVID, we have the period of the decline in the cost, very rapid decline in the cost, getting to very, very interesting numbers of under $50 per kilowatt hour. And as you know, LFP, among the current incumbent technologies, provides the lowest one because primarily of the absence of nickel and cobalt in it. But this has really changed the scene. This has really made a lot of projects economically feasible. And toward that experience, which China has gained, we are having a lot of kind of other development in the sector. So about the LFP itself, it's almost entirely, again, dominated by the Chinese players, all over the value chain from the upstream of the LFP production to the cell production. And now what we are seeing that expertise and that knowledge has been very much well transferred into the energy storage sector. So this really declined the cost, has consolidated their efforts, has really the stationary storage has absorbed a lot of either overcapacity, that term that happened last year a lot, provided opportunity for the absorptions of those losses, but also it shouldn't be overlooked that China is very good at building LFP, manufacturing LFP, and really have consolidated the supply chain. So that knowledge has been very well transferred to this sector. We are seeing that going to the downstream with the new announcement by CATL for the container of 9 megawatt hours. So as you see, the integration is very well happening, and again, that's the expertise that come from years of production of LFP. That expertise, again, at the cell level is going very fast toward the very cost-efficient technologies. So we are seeing plus 500 amp hour cells. So this is very cost efficient. You are really saving a lot of manufacturing costs, and you're just the majority of the cost goes to the active material, which is LFP, again, which is a cheap option. So everything is becoming very cheap, driven by the technology, driven by scale, and driven by the expertise. So what we have in Europe in terms of LFP projects and battery projects are 90%. So on the stationary storage sector is 90% comes from two companies in China, so CATL and ESC, and we have a little bit of a share for the LG Chem. So that's the market. That's the state at the moment, and as welcomed as that kind of progress in deployment of the project is, this is kind of a very particular version of progress. I want to touch upon a couple of alternative technologies This is very extensive. We need hours to go through each one of them. But relating them to the point that I mentioned about the dominance of Chinese LFP in the sector. What are the alternatives? The main alternatives that we can think about first that comes to mind, especially after again the rise of the cost of lithium in 2021 and 2. Really, sodium popped up as a best solution to remove the cost burden of lithium. But also energy density and again the performance of it is not as much fit for the mobility sector. It's moving very fast. It's moving very rapidly toward that scene. I don't want to undermine that efforts, but I still, at least from the range size that is expected in Europe, again, as you know, in China we have a possibility of having lower range vehicles because of the very good charging systems there. But still, this is an alternative. The main point is that we can detach ourselves from the need for the lithium itself. The production process is the same. So again, that's a good opportunity that we can use to have the knowledge that we have applied it to the sodium ion mostly. But also again, the flip side is that China has already been very good in making these chemistries. So why not go into this sector? And as we see at the moment, they are very good also at sodium-ion batteries and dominate also that market too. But European players, just a little bit about them. So what we have at the moment is Tiamat, the French startup, a spin-off of the very good body of knowledge generated in Europe by the universities, specifically CNRS. And again, as you know, Professor Torascon is one of the co-founders. So this is very much based on what we accumulated here in terms of the battery knowledge. They have production plans for 2030 for 5 gigawatt hour. I will get to the specific technologies of them later at the moment. But still, just like the lithium-ion batteries, we have the stakeholders figuring out their position in the supply chain. This is the same for the sodium-ion. We can see all three again going to the Stora, and so having that partnership for the hard carbon for producing the anode materials from the bio-based materials. This is very good progress. I will get to the fact that we also in BEPA have taken care of that in terms of funding for the R&I project. But just keep in mind that we are still thinking about the new technology without really having that kind of a supply and value chain built around it, and we are thinking in isolation about the cells, about the specific kind of progresses, but not the whole holistic value chain perspective. Same goes for the flow batteries. So another alternative, just very much provides a kind of a very specific and very interesting scaling opportunity, because you can decouple the energy from the power. You know that better. I don't want to get in details of that. But the main technology here is vanadium redox flow battery. And the main problem with the vanadium is its cost. And we don't have the supply in Europe at the moment. The vanadium is primarily come from the steel production is a byproduct of that. So no steel production in Europe, or very little vanadium. A good point is that you acknowledge that to be in the Critical Raw Materials Act. There are very much the opportunities to work on the cell design, on the stack design, on the other materials, but still the problem is vanadium. The cost of vanadium is very high, and we really don't see the cost decline that we experienced with the lithium-ion batteries for the vanadium since 2010s. Just a very complicated picture. It's not as complicated. It really shows that if you want to deploy the vanadium itself, in particular on larger scale, you can see the compound annual growth rate figures. It's very high. If you see the horizontal dashed lines are what we have at the moment. So we're really thinking about opening up a kind of a huge effort to address that. But there are alternatives to flow batteries, many. I want to just point out to one particular one, which really gets out of that gridlock of vanadium supply itself. comes from the Professor Michael Aziz's group in Harvard. Started with that, but a lot of group, especially also in Europe, have worked on that, have built on that. But very simple, at, starting from a simple redox particles, organic molecules, but very safe because they are dissolved in aqueous electrolytes. So these very simple molecules, again, to get them to the performance, you have to add functions. You have to design that molecule, tune it up for different battery performances, solubility, cycle life, performance, crossover, loss, etc. So you get after some points, and that is an ongoing research in different groups, to a very complicated molecule at some point, and that adds to the cost. So the primary reason for the little bit of a late deployment of these projects is the cost of the synthesis of these molecules. And what we have at the moment, we have a very good study that actually has done the techno-economics of that. And we saw that the Bayer, German chemical industry, specialty chemicals like Bayer and BASF, have the production processes already in place for making this. And if you have not been hearing from Draghi, you haven't had the weekly dose, I have it one for you. So again, this points out to the direction that was very much highlighted in his report. We have to mobilize this sector. You can see really there is an existing knowledge and expertise in Europe about these chemicals. This is the very kind of one of the very many examples that you can see that the chemical industry and the legacy industry can get into the energy transition. It's about the scale. It's about really deploying that technologies, shifting it a little bit or not shifting it, but really accommodating new markets, new application. And that is something that I think as a broader battery community, we have work to do. We have really negotiations to do with these stakeholders, but we know that we have the expertise on the products and they have the expertise on the production, and there is a needed push from our side and also from the public side to get them into the game in a bit more seriousness. Okay, so about the application, just the parts that we cover with these technologies, the specific areas that we are trying to address with these technologies, we almost a lot, not all, but the majority of the way that we think about the stationary storage for the batteries is long duration, and that long duration has been a fluid kind of a metric because we considered over 4 as at some point as long duration, and again the cost of the lithium-ion battery, that declining cost, has made it fit for longer duration. So I think at the moment 6 or 8 hours is still feasible with the numbers that we have with the lithium-ion batteries. But the point here is that the EU has goals of adoption of renewable energy, and that adoption figure, which at the moment is 45% for 2030, demands really long duration and longer duration storage. So if we want to really get to the high penetration rates, we really need to develop the technologies that are go beyond 8 and 10 hours. They can do the service, they can do it economically. And that is very, they should be really cheap. This is the point of this complicated figure. If you see from left to right, you go from the duration of 10 hours to 50 to 100, and you can see, and the counters are the capex cost of a lithium-ion battery, so that dollar per kilowatt hour, and you can see how exponentially you have to reach to a lower capex cost. And on the left side, on the y-axis, you see the round trip efficiency. So as you know, the options that we have at the moment, like metal earth, provide, in theory, a very cheap material cost, going for a cheap production cost, but also low round trip efficiency. So it's a very difficult game. You have to balance with them, with all these factors, towards something that is still very cheap for the daily, weekly, monthly, also seasonal storage. So this is very much our focus. I will get to the projects that we have defined under this. But I want to use the buzzword that we at BEP are using a lot these days, and that's the double diversity challenge. So that's not the end game. We have many more applications that we know and we are realizing at the moment that are needed for the this comprehensive energy system that we have in Europe. So for all of those applications, to accommodate all those diversity, you also need to develop a diverse portfolio of the chemistries. The data centers are the very hot topic at the moment, and as you can see, batteries are already being deployed for that, are already being applied. But again, these are not necessarily 100% fit for purpose. There will be a knowledge coming out of these applications and these deployments that what is specifically needed for them. Two just quick examples of this kind of a diversification dynamics that is happening in the sector. So Tiamat, for instance, has its battery is not for long duration at the moment. What their product is 10C polyanion sodium-ion batteries for UPS. So it's a very interesting product that they have at the moment. So they started with this sector, as you know. This is a little bit probably can tolerate higher costs, and that's the approach that they took at the moment. They rightly realized the kind of a gray area of the application and the many options that they have, and they really chose the one that fits for them at the moment. And one thing that's a little bit of a souvenir from the battery show days in Stuttgart, you see Leon. I don't know how to exactly pronounce it, V-Lion, the Chinese cell manufacturer. They have this storage solid-state battery, which is very big, the 314 amp hours, and solid-state, and it's 5C discharge. It's a very peculiar combination of metrics, but the point here is that there is a market for this, and this goes beyond the conventional wisdom of the broader of the main applications. It really shows that in a country like China, where the deployment of the battery energy storage system is high, you can see more options pop up, more options in terms of application, and results in a kind of a more tailored strategy and products that needs to be developed. So on the policy side, we have Jacopo on our panel here, so I don't really get to the details of this, but the European Union, the new European Union, the Commission itself, the new Commission started to work on the what is called the competitiveness agenda for really getting life back to the European industries. The main legislation that came out of this is the EU Clean Industrial Deal, which is pending. It has its own timeline, focusing on the energy-intensive industries, focusing on the clean tech sector. We had a very extensive webinar on the implications of this for the battery sector. You are welcome to see that in details. But in principle, there are incentives about the deployment, but about the markets, and again, funding opportunities and financing under the stated framework, under the new projects for the first industrialization, under the innovation fund itself, but also points about the circularity and access to materials, skills, global market, and international partnership. It's very extensive. I will get to the main parts that relates to this sector in conversation with Jacopo. But again, you are very much welcome to see how we analyzed it in our BEPA webinar. So I give you a screenshot of the BATT4EU project. So the funding for this specific area under our partnership. In Horizon 2020, so the LC-BATT, famous LC-BATT projects, we have many projects that worked on this area. This was very much acknowledged then, and it is still being acknowledged throughout the BATT4EU partnership. So we have projects on the BMS for this sector, on the hardware and integration part. The modeling, data-based analysis, and digitalization is very much at the core of what we foresee as the need of this sector. And in parallel, we indeed are trying to develop and make that diversification happen, so develop the new chemistries, more sustainable, more recyclable, and free of, or at least minimizing the critical raw materials. So again, the scale of the deployment of this sector is very large, so we really don't want to add to the dependency on that part. So it moves forward to the 2026 under the development of the technology, but also adding the material and supply chain and the raw materials processes to the portfolio of the European projects that are pursuing that. The blue part is a new one on the deployment. That is something that came out of the Clean Industry deal. 300 million for the deployment. So TRL 7 and 8 is the target. For a broad portfolio of the clean tech technologies, clean tech, and also battery energy storage is there. This is one part among many, but still there's a good opportunity. I think each project will be 15 to 20 million or something like that. So we are expecting many projects coming out there. You have to add to this portfolio the innovation fund projects. As you know, we had under the general topics, battery energy storage systems projects taken over in different countries, and also this is different from the innovation fund for the battery manufacturing. This is something that has been already under the general cost. So these topics come with many interesting projects. Please check them out and see what we have been doing in the BATT4EU community under these projects. There's a link there, so you can really enjoy the reading and surfing within these very interesting topics. So wrapping up with what I tried to a little bit highlight during my presentation is that this is very much an area that is growing. Some people knew it much more in advance, but still for the larger community is becoming a very solid realization that the market is big. What we think at BEPA is that what we started as the more focus on the deployment and on the installation of the battery energy storage projects should really get into the core technology, development of the technology, development of the cells, development of the new batteries, but also manufacturing of those and the supply chain that comes with that. So we have this, we need to have and develop this kind of holistic and value chain oriented view. As I mentioned, this is this is very much affects this sector, the energy security of Europe, and what we see at the moment, the shape of it at the moment is not really promising. That it alleviates the concerns of the energy dependence and independence. There are many projects and there are many technologies that are coming up, primarily because of the diversifications of the applications that I mentioned already in my presentation. So very rough conclusion is that our efforts to have a more storage-friendly energy system, electricity system in Europe, really harmonizing the policies and regulation should really be accompanied by a zest and by quest for developing the value chain itself, the technologies itself, the supply chain around it, and really putting investment in the development of the new technologies. Okay, thank you so much. I see some Q&A. I try to answer them in the meanwhile or get to our panel for that, but with that, let me introduce our panel. First is Adele Sheridan. Adele is the Senior Business Developer of Syntef, also the technical leader of the BATT4EU project, of course. And indeed, she's the member of the executive board of BEPA. Thank you, Adele, for joining. Welcome. Next is Jacopo Tossoni. Jacopo is the head of policy at the European Association for Storage of Energy, or EASE. Welcome, Jacopo, and thank you for joining us. And the last panelist is Luigi Lanuzza. Luigi is the head of the B2B innovation at NLX and also member of the association delegation of BEPA. So thank you all for joining us and taking the time. I want to start with Adele. And while we are on it, let's talk about the technology. So as I mentioned, it was very, very abstract, but what do you think about the what is in the pipeline? So you have been one of the leaders of the BATT4EU project, and on the BATT4EU, you have been developing a roadmap for the European Union on what are the main technologies out there and what needs to be focused on. So about the, let's say, in broader sense, on the chemistries, what do you think is there? Where are things headed?
I think firstly, I'd like to point out perhaps that stationary storage is both in front of the meter, which basically where you're looking at the grid connections. So these are kind of larger scale systems that you would use. And it's also behind the meter. So it's, let's say, for consumers or communities that want to set up an energy storage system in their neighborhood, for example, or individual houses or off-grid kind of areas. So there's two distinct sections to it. So some of the batteries will overlap in both of them, others perhaps will not. So this is one of the main points I'd like to make, and just also to distinguish a little between what's meant by long duration energy storage. Long duration is where you have a battery that, or you have a storage system that can provide energy for many, many hours, let's say over long periods from minutes to hours up to maybe 8 or 12 hours. Where a long-term energy storage system is something that can store energy without losing any of the capacity over time. So just to give a little bit of defining on the different scales of this. So we have seen that there are several different approaches to looking at these stationary storage batteries. Of course, you started with the LFP, the lithium iron phosphate. I just want to point out one of the issues with lithium iron phosphate will be when they come to the end of life. It's not only that we only have a supplier from one region of the world, it's when they come to the end of their life, there's very little value in recycling them. So in Europe, we have addressed this. We have looked at this in both Batteries Europe and in BEPA at how do we make that particularly profitable, because in the short term, that needs to be looked at. Or is it possible to make it profitable? Then when we look at the different chemistries that can be applied to stationary storage, we have the sodium ion. Both the current sodium ion, they can be advanced even further, but there can be new developments coming up in the sodium ion area. So one sodium ion battery is not all sodium ion batteries, because the cathodes materials can be quite different. The electrolyte can be quite different. So it's almost a whole cheese board of batteries you're talking about for sodium ion alone. So we should just be aware of that, but it could be a really good winner for Europe if we can select something that will be relatively low cost and from a point of view of the critical raw materials, because that's one of our main issues here in Europe. We don't have the critical raw materials. This is also an issue for the vanadium batteries, and we've seen two huge deployments of vanadium batteries recently in the world. We've seen Aramco, which is a company that have installed a megawatt scale iron vanadium flow battery in Saudi Arabia. That's been done recently. And Roke Power, they have installed the largest vanadium flow battery in China. So flow batteries have a place in stationary storage. And these are vanadium flow, but the newer flow batteries that we're developing could really, really support this. So currently there's a focus on developing flow batteries, looking at newer chemistries, how that's going to be done, like the example you presented. And as you said, we have a start in the chemical industry here in Europe. We should utilize that start. We know how to synthesize chemicals. We have a background in it. We have a huge pharmaceutical industry. We should utilize the knowledge, and we also have built up that knowledge base already. We have people here that can produce these at large scale. So we essentially should utilize what we have. Of course, like there's in the flow batteries, there are so many different types of batteries, but there's also a few other niche kind of batteries that are coming up. There's this liquid metal batteries, for example, that could be utilized. I'm sorry, I have to grab the document here because we have so many different areas.
So many applications. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there are many applications. There's metal air that we've seen. That has been like a kind of a battery that's been quite difficult to get metal air to really work, but there has been huge steps going forward in that area, like zinc air. Then there's durable metal sulfur batteries. There are many, many different chemistries here. One of the issues, we are developing these chemistries. Which ones should we bring towards to industrialization? That is one of the kind of questions that we have to keep in mind. And what sector are we developing them for? I'm sorry to come with such a long answer, but I thought it's good to kind of set maybe the framework around this, of that it's not just when we talk stationary storage, you have two different sectors, very distinct sectors. You have the large scale users like Luigi's company and Al. I would imagine you want a larger scale storage system, whereas the domestic downtown building will maybe want a separate storage system, or something that's off grid. In particular, we've a lot of cabins here in Norway, for example. So they will want something quite different. So it's a wide cheese board. So
Yeah,
sorry.
exactly.
Yeah.
No, thank you so much. I mean, that is the point. That is the point that we are getting to know the options, and we are getting to know the demand part. So and that's part of the journey. I think that that we are developing all this chemistry is not really a wasteful effort. It's just because that we have been asked for that, and I just want to verify that with Luigi to see from your perspective as a big player in the front and behind the meter. What is the do you see that need? Do you in your sector are facing with the challenges that there are not the technologies out there, or that cost drop in the lithium-ion batteries, for instance, address the major part of it? Or how much are you dealing with that? How much are you, in your from your perspective, is needed for having options?
Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me to this webinar, and I appreciate both intervention, which really made the framework, both Edel and both you, Bozog. In a short answer, what I can say that yes, of course, we do need the value of having a storage system, and we do see also the value of diversification in a market which is currently dominated by lithium iron phosphate technologies, which is good. This technology, the benefit of large economy of scales, and we are seeing now affordable cost more and more. But there is a but, and is the risk of focusing on a single technology. This is also something that we see, and we, especially as innovation, we look always around looking for alternatives. This is more clear in case of long duration energy storage, where let's say up to 6-8 hours lithium perhaps is still a good solution. Larger than that, then the cost of the system itself, not only the batteries, let us make some questions. We know, of course, there are solutions like the early mentioned redox flow batteries, consolidated technology, especially if we speak about vanadium. We also inaugurate a project some months ago in Spain, but still with some limitation when we pass from the first of a kind, the POC to the industrial scale because of the cost that you already mentioned, and also the technology itself, which is focusing on a specific material. And again, if we focus on a specific technology / material, there are risks. So diversification is a key. Coming back to long duration energy storage, the limit we see as of today is in the available technologies. I also would mention the efficiency, which if you aim to move very large volumes of energy, then the efficiency does matter, of course, because the amount you lose is finally additional cost to the service. We look to the new technologies you mentioned for those flows, for instance. Yes, with quite an interest. For an industrial perspective, what is needed is make some security in the investment, huge investment you need, especially for new technology, which may need some support not to be exploited. For instance, in Italy, we had a good mechanism we saw with the Terna, our TSO, for the Maxe market. They are making some mechanism for let's say make safe the investment with a mechanism of long support in time for a technology which will last for 20 or more years. And address the need of having support in the initial capex. These are, let's say, positive example with which in our perspective we would like to see more and more. Also in other markets, I remember I saw some sector in Greece, in England, UK as well, supporting with different mechanism this kind of need for a technology to be developed and introduced into the market. This is only about large volumes, which will be needed more and more because of the penetration of renewables, as we said, and there is likely sometimes also a market because we see fluctuation in price of energy. So perhaps the opportunity for arbitrage is there or is going to arrive. When we spoke about behind the meter solution, well, of course, there are a lot of opportunities already addressed by lithium ion, I would say. Quite better if we think to our houses. Passing to the commercial industrial segment, Europe is less developed. Also there we see some new opportunity. Again, thinking to the fluctuation of the price, so hedging this fluctuation may be more and more a need for our industrial customer. This is a segment I specifically follow. And sometimes there are specific opportunities. I'm thinking also to heavy industries, where they have batch process and then perhaps renewable installed on site. Then some hours you don't have production. Then there is an opportunity for batteries. Just for giving you some example.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, this really paints us a good picture of different levels of opportunities and different levels of what are the projects are aiming to. But as you mentioned, there is this sector that is very much entangled with the regulation and the incentives and the opportunities for monetization of those projects. And that is a very fragmented scene. But I want to ask Jacopo about his take on what is cooking up at the European Commission to make things more coordinated. So if you could give us a kind of your overview of the developments and how they relates to the friendliness of the member states and the market for this under Clean Industrial Deal, under the Affordable Energy Act, or
Yeah,
any
of course.
other kind of a new
Sure.
updates on this? Yeah.
So very
Thank you.
telegraphically, speaking on behalf of EASE, which is the European Association for Storage of Energy, as you were saying at the beginning, representing all technologies and all actors across the energy storage value chain. So you had quite an optimistic take. Let's say how is the is the European Union trying to simplify or improve the legislative framework for energy storage? I think that you're absolutely right. There's still a lot of work to do. But maybe taking a step back, I think what the policymakers see in the market, what the policymakers see in the data is that electrochemical energy storage is deploying extremely fast. Is expected to overtake pump hydro storage as early as next year. The front of the meter market is growing extremely rapidly and is catching up and behind the meter in the next 2 to 3 years. And there is clear issues throughout Europe in terms of negative prices, for example, which is something that can improve the economics of energy storage, though. There is a decrease in system prices for battery energy storage system, for example. So again, a positive trend. But maybe there is still some clear issues, for example, related to project delays or related to undue costs. And so this is very much where the European Commission is trying to focus on at the moment, making the business case stronger by looking at the costs, looking at the revenues, looking at the bureaucracy. So looking at the costs, there's still quite a barrier to entry in the high capital cost in Europe, high debt costs. So there is significant focus on, in the context of the Clean Industrial Deal and the state aid framework related to it, in trying to push for energy storage deployed with renewables, but also on its own, looking at the short-term duration, but also at the longer-term duration, looking at front of the meter, but also, for example, in the context of industry decarbonization, different technology, battery, thermal, to try to lower the carbon footprint of industry processes, but also improve their competitiveness. And also pushing for a bigger role of storage, for example, in capacity markets. So all these activities to make sure that actors have access to maybe state aid coming from the national level, especially. And then in the end, maybe we close all these loops that in the past we're financing maybe fossil fuel-based solution over a storage solution, or at least a green flexibility solution. We also see maybe activities in the context of making sure, as I was saying, that there are no undue costs, and for storage, the no undue costs are the ones related to network charges and the one related to taxation. And starting with the latter, we have already a file that is the taxation directive revision that is ongoing. So we will see lower taxation and possibly a positive impact for energy storage, and the same things for grid fees, which historically is a national topic, but we'll see that the European Union at least is gonna do some guidance, which again is particularly important because it's a huge cost for storage. It can be 40% in the total ownership cost, depends on the specific application and so on and so forth, but still an incredibly high number. And it's going to try to tackle the Commission is going to try to tackle the project delays. They are due to maybe the connection processes to the grid. Storage is still a novel technology in the eyes of the bureaucracy, so there's not really a specific path for storage in most member states, and maybe permitting. That's a similar issue, and hopefully an issue where we're going to see some, maybe non-legislative, but at least policy activity from the European Union to push the different member states in acting and improving the situation across Europe. The situation across Europe right now, it is positive, as I was saying at the beginning. And maybe as you were mentioning in the introduction, we do have new installations in 2024, record installations. We do have improving economics. We do see an acceleration, but this acceleration in deployment is very much uneven from member state to member state. And it's really driven by different revenues that are not necessarily standardized or similar across Europe. And maybe all these different things, it's not necessarily something that the European Commission is adoring per se, and maybe some kind of more homogeneity, some kind of more improvement in what's happening both at the EU and the national and potential local level. It's in the minds of the European policymaker at this moment.
Okay, thank you so much. I mean, I will get back to you to ask about how the Commission embeds or helps what is happening in the broader supply chain of the clean tech. I mean, the Clean Industry Deal was taking into account the supply chain of the clean tech, in particular, its pillars on the raw materials and resilience and incorporating that into that finance. But I will come back to you with the more kind of a detailed question on how it relates to that in the eyes of the Commission. But before that, I want to ask Luigi about the point that you mentioned about the fragmented revenue streams throughout the Europe and a standardization of that kind of a monetization and asset managements in a broader schemes. But we have been having projects like Interstore. I know Luigi has been involved with that project, but at the system level and at the deployment level, what are we struggling with in that industrialization perspective, from the standardization perspective? What do we need from software perspective? I will get back to the hardware part more with Adele. But what has been developed under that project, the lessons learned for the broader kind of activities that we have?
Well, thank you for the question. No, you mentioned the Interstore, which is a project, an Horizon project, which we are part of a very strong consortium with very good RTS and also industries. It was aiming when we start to project the project itself to address the interoperability, how to optimize the possibility to have different assets working together in the best way possible, especially batteries, in different use cases, from the domestic retail up to the large scale. Why this? Because we did see issues in solving sometimes a very, I would say, must be easy to solve issues like let's have different protocols talk one to each other, but still it's very time consuming and cost consuming as well, cost not effective. We have some result in the specific project, interesting, but this is a barrier, or let's say a possible barrier we have still to work on, optimizing these kind of problems of having different hardwares, IoT talking one to each other. In the most recent years, I'm thinking of how, for instance, artificial intelligence could support this. This is I'm just wondering. I'm not expert in this, but perhaps there are possibilities for this kind of solution. Application itself, apart from having the hardware talk to one to each other, we worked a lot. We just inaugurated another project. It's Pioneer in the airport of Rome. Is a very large system made from second life batteries, and there our specific contributions. Enel is the energy management system at a high level for optimizing different revenue streams. This is something we are working since a lot. Again, it's based on machine learning. Another, let's say, sometimes buzzword, but very effective when you try to optimize different revenue streams. So it's not only about the battery itself, it's how to use, of course, in the different application for sure. And then I leave to Edel for the more hardware-related answer, but let's just think sometimes of very easy invention sometimes, but optimization at the system level, like having higher voltage, make a DC-DC conversion in the CDC side. This kind of very smart application can make a project most economically viable. Sometimes just how to think in a clever manner a system.
Yep, thank you. Exactly. You mentioned the Pioneer projects, and we are having a lot of questions of the second life. So we will get to that. But before that, I just want to go to Adele and to complete that conversation with Luigi about the hardware part of it and how the auxiliary systems in general can really help with that monetization. So they go hand in hand, and they contribute to a better cost and lower cost.
Well, earlier I kind of made a brief kind of effort to point towards the cheese board of battery technologies we can technically use in the system. From a point of view of which ones we select to do research on, that's also part of what BEPA is doing, just to mention. But when it comes to the energy storage system, it's not only the battery you select, it's very much, as Luigi has pointed out, we have to look at how it's interoperable. We have to look at the IoT connections. We have to look at how the system's going to operate. So he has kind of taken the digital side, which is good because I don't know very much about the digital side, to be quite honest. But I can say that we need to have research on looking at the power electronics, and we need also to have the base to produce this in Europe. It's not only that we need to look at how it's working. We should be producing this, and we should have the reassurance that what we're producing, what goes in there, is going to work in our systems. So this is the power electronics, the converters. This can make a huge rectifiers, inverters. All this needs further development, because we're talking about an energy system that is differing from our energy system earlier. It needs to be more durable. It needs to be able to endure faster changes that are occurring in our energy system. It needs to be taking in several different sources of power that is coming maybe from a solar plant, from a wind plant, also from the traditional plants we've had. So there's a lot more complexity built into our system. So both the hardware and the software we need to invest in significantly to make this work. This is something we can and we really, really should do. Also, there's another factor here. There is developing the sensors in the system. So I read recently developing the SOC analysis properly for it was for an LFP battery, incidentally, but developing it properly could save up to 11% on the end bill for the owner of the system. Like, they could actually really, really make a lot more use of the battery. The energy sector have traditionally been always very, very careful about of having good boundaries between their systems, which is understandable. So they have over-dimensioned many aspects. But we do see this over-dimensioning as it's very costly. And we know that if we invest in stationary storage, if we invest 20 euros in stationary storage, we can save 100 euros in the grid upgrading. So this has already been, it was documented in, and I think it was a link that was provided by BEPA earlier.
Yes, it was the CEO of Accor that
This-
wrote that article about. Yeah, yes.
This is really, really significant
Yes, yeah.
because replacing all our grid, first of all, you have to go, farming up half the county and digging up poles here, there, and everywhere in order to replace a lot of the grid infrastructure, which is not very popular among the public in general. And also, it's the huge cost of developing the grid infrastructure. We can use stationary storage to help in this.
Yeah.
So, and
No,
we should
absolutely.
use it. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, when we think about a kind of a harmonized value chain, and also it really, a lot of conversations are diverted to the manufacturing equipment, for instance, for the cell manufacturing, and we always nag that, okay, we don't have a harmonized kind of a production processes, and it's detached from the material production. So we don't have a knowledge of the material that translates into a kind of a disaligned production processes that work efficiently. But there is another kind of a perspective to that, as you mentioned, it's also about if you have the batteries here, you can develop the better management system, battery management system, or thermal management system that really prolong the lifetime or make a better use of it. But again, to the point that we are making, that the value chain is the non-European value chain has very kind of a different variety of implications that also comes from a very downstream on the management of the assets. That's kind of agnostic view about the origin of the material and the origin of the manufacturing process and what is in the cell and the performance of the cell. It will be translated into kind of a incapability of better managing and writing the algorithms and using the data for that. So that's another kind of a
there are huge wins.
non-coordinator.
Yeah, there are huge wins to be made on being able to really modify our management systems, both the battery and energy management systems. There are a lot of wins that can be made, both the physical infrastructure and, of course, the digital side of it.
Mm-hmm.
There's
So
many
let me ask
advancements.
a bit of a tricky question to Jakuba about that. You have a very long history of experience with dealing with the European Commission about the storage in general. As you mentioned, it has a technology neutral view. But as you see that projects, and you mentioned a little bit about the cost challenges from different perspective. But as you see, there is a strong connection with the supply chain of it in general. So what we see in the battery sector, the cost and everything, and the technologies, but also again the deployment of the projects, the installation of the project relates a lot to the supply chain part of it. And my question is not about the what is in the supply chain, but just to ask, what is your view of the Commission's view of that connection? Do they take that into account? You've seen the kind of a, I don't know, from the outside, the kind of a new update in thinking of the Commission about the competitiveness and all these documents that are popping out every day. But do you see kind of a that update in thinking that things are related? The notion of that is in the clean industrial deal, because energy comes with the clean sector. But in general, from your members that provide different technologies, is there an urge to convince the Commission that these things are not as detached as some documents from the Commission points out to? I don't know if that's a very big question, but
no, yeah. If I try to answer, and if I understand correctly what you asked, I think generally speaking, there's been a growing understanding from the European Commission regarding the role of energy storage. I think if you had asked me this question a few years back, especially before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we will not necessarily have had this conversation. I mean, here Edel was mentioning the role of energy storage in the context of grids, for example, and I think probably we're at the forefront of another shift from the European Union in understanding this topic, because there's another critical moment. There's been another critical moment with the Spanish blackout. So I think as things go forward, we can really see huge improvements and a more comprehensive understanding of policymakers of the topic. That said, if I look at what the European Union has put, or what the European Commission has put forward from an R&I perspective, from a deployment perspective, and from a manufacturing perspective in the context of storage, I at times I struggle to find a fil rouge. There's maybe a good understanding in certain parts of the European Commission of what needs to be done, but not throughout the spectrum. And here maybe it's where our work needs to be done, to really not only being able to have the people who work on the research or work on the energy part in the institution understanding what's the role of storage, but everyone else also, the people related to working more on the economy, on the sector that related to the uptakers of energy storage. So that's definitely a big struggle. And so, yeah, to answer your questions, some improvement, but here, if we look really at what has been proposed, it's an incredibly high amount of new ways to support the sector that is not necessarily always tailored to storage again, and is not always maybe easy to understand, even if you're a company. Easy to understand if you're not a policymaker or someone working in policy as me. So that's probably where we have to have a more coherent approach. And I have to be maybe a bit negative here. That's not something that we see being addressed by the European Union in the next few years. Next few years. I think, if we look at the other side of the spectrum, we always have the IRA, which was definitely not something related to the supply chain only, definitely not related to deployment only, definitely not related to R&I only. It was extremely high level. It was extremely general. It was a file that was followed extremely well by the European Commission. But it didn't really become a blueprint for European Union's work, not because it was considered ineffective. It was extremely effective, as a matter of fact, but because of how the European Union work, and because of the understanding that in reality, if you look at the money being deployed, maybe European Union deploys even more funding than IRA, but from the industry side or from the association side, from mine, I can really see that the IRA was so easy to understand for either an investor or a company, that there's really no comparison. So again, to answer your question, I'm a bit negative. I think there's great initiative coming forward from the European Union, not extremely coherent, maybe one with each other, not always a perfect fil rouge, but extremely positive nonetheless.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much. I think also from our BEPA side, we share your concerns. Indeed, we also, regarding the IRA, for instance, we consulted the Commission from our side, and our position that we published was to make for instance, the state aid framework somehow resemble that. At some point, as you said, it's a very complicated machine, and sometimes you have to utilize one part of it that was not meant to be used in that way, but momentarily. But as you mentioned, there's still a lot of work to do, and there's still a lot of new ways to make. But thank you. Let me a little bit shift to, or actually concretely shift to the questions in the chat from our attendees, and also point out to the project Pioneer in the context of the second life batteries. This is the question that we are getting, and I skipped that in my presentation because that's a very broad topic. But let me share the announcement of the projects with Luigi and ask about it, and then we can extend the conversation on the pros and cons of this specific asset. So, Luigi, this is a very exemplary project of how we can utilize this technology. But could you give us a little bit of a highlight of how it actually works and what has been the...
Yeah, no, we spoke before about interoperability. No, another example of interoperability. In this case, the aim of this project was having access as much as possible to a number of different batteries, second life batteries in the market. You know, avoiding to have again the constraint of a single technology, in this case a single producer. So it's integrated three different batteries, three different OEMs, basically batteries, Mercedes, Stellantis, Nissan, with different also edging batteries, and side by side different integration technologies. So Mercedes are modules, while the other two are battery packs, just taken from the cars. Pro and cons of the different solution. If you take the packs, of course, costs are lower, but you don't really know what is inside. I mean, there are slight difference module to modules, and then lower efficiency in the system. If you take the modules, the costs are higher, but then finally you have a very selected bin of very equalized batteries, and performance are like a new batteries. In our perspective, our calculation, this second way will be more effective in terms of total cost of ownership in the years to come, when we will have likely some automatization to dismantle the battery packs. And looking to the markets, when we started some years ago, it was, I think, the Christmas vacation between 2020 and 21 during the COVID. I remember this. At that time, first of all, at the time, battery packs was the most effective solution because of the cost. And there were some small scale operator proposing instead the second solution, so modules, integrated modules. Some of them now are companies still in the startup phase, but with kind of gigawatt hour of installation already. So there is a niche of products, yes, but there is also a huge volume of battery, second life batteries arriving. In 2027, we will have the very first wave of real returning batteries from the industry, while as of today, we're mainly defective packs or incidents, or battery comes from long duration test of cars. And is already a volume of gigawatt hours. Is not negligible at all, because when we speak about cars, we speak about volumes which are huge, of course, as we know, compared to stationary storage. Nowadays, a car has a battery ranging from 40, 50 kilowatt hours up to 100 kilowatt hours, which means 10 houses, just for giving some idea. So there are opportunities. I saw a question in the chat. Was thinking, okay, what is the perspective if we have also fast decreasing cost of batteries or new batteries? And again, yes, the new batteries are decreasing very fast, the cost, the price, more than the cost, perhaps, but also the second life as well. It's related to the very availability of systems of batteries. And again, looking to the market, we saw some interesting proposals. Apart from interoperability, the other value is managing these different assets, modelizing the degradation, the different models, batteries. Again, interoperability and software development, and also system modularity, so system integration is a value from this kind of project.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I mean, we couldn't explain it better. Going through an actual project that has been in the place, so everything that all the challenges that come with the second life, you could really hear it from Luigi on actually what are the different parts of the puzzle. But thank you a little bit on that. I want to stay on the on that technology views on and different options. And I want to go to Adele to ask about the hybridization. That's something also that we are getting a little bit on question. But you have also been involved, Adele, with the storage project, which has the target of shedding light on onto this approach. What was the challenge that you wanted to address? So, what was the view? How did you put the machine together?
Yeah, when we started out with the storage project, there was, a few projects randomly here and there looking at hybridization, but there was no structure around the whole area. And actually, many of the definitions were not even there. They were not very solid. They were very fluid. And we basically set some definitions in place, which was very helpful because then we at least knew what we were talking about together. And I think these definitions have been taken up generally across Europe. That's what we are trying to help. We produced an SRIA, and that SRIA has looked at many different aspects of the stationary storage. So I'm just going to take a look at the notes I've made because it's kind of important that I get it right. So firstly, they were looking at, how they can develop the long-term and long-duration stationary storage. So long-term, as I said, long-term is about how long it can hold the storage, and long duration is about how long it can provide the energy to a system. So if you're going to combine a long duration and long-term energy storage system, you're probably going to have to combine two systems. There are very few systems that can do both. To have this instant take up, there is maybe a couple of systems, but then you need, like for, let's say, the hydro, pumped hydro, you need a certain large capacity, you need large space to pump it up. You need preferably a landscape where you can do it. And this is not always possible. So there are many different options of combining different types of storage that they have really, really looked at. And they've also looked into, like, how can you use digitalization to our advantage? And this is kind of, in order to deploy this into the market, we're going to, particularly if we're going to have multi-vector energy storage and conversion systems. So this is where you talk about, let's say, the stacking of services. So there's many services provided by the energy industry, and when you need to stack services, and this, of course, has a political dimension, but I'm not going to talk about that side. I'm talking about if you're literally going to stack services, you have to have a means of something that can respond within milliseconds, but something that can also respond over a long, long period of time. So usually having a dual system, one that can switch over to the other and do this in a very smooth way, then you have, a good energy storage system. So they've looked at the different energy storage systems, kind of defined them within the SRIA document, and they've looked at how can this multi-vector energy storage system be utilized to the best effect. And then it kind of comes into what digitalization will do, like what we touched on earlier. And it becomes, in one sense, it's a bit more advanced, but in another sense, it's a little bit easier, because if you have a secondary system that you can fall back on, you don't run into the problems of, okay, this the battery system is let's say becoming depleted, then we need to switch, what are we going to use? Then you have a secondary system. So when there was the outage in Spain, as I understand, that outage was quite a long outage. It didn't stop after 8 hours. It was 24 or maybe longer in some places. And having a hybrid energy storage system would have been helpful in that situation. So that could be also something that could really help in the long run. So basically they went into looking at this multi-vector storage system and how the digitalization can help that, and they looked into basically the long and short-term duration. They were some of the main points that they've really sketched out in their SRIA, which will really help in the long run for developing it. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there for a moment and maybe I can come back to it afterwards.
Well, thank you so much. I'm sharing the link to the project so people can really see what we are exactly talking about. This was a flagship project on the coordination effort on the hybridization funded by the European Union. And they published the SRIA already. I mean, the SRIA is out there, but is completed. But I'm not sure if that's open.
It is completed. I believe it should be. It should be open and available. Because they have very much been working on providing this. They have also a roadmap that has been done earlier, which kind of is more the cheese board that shows everything. And then the SRIA is more focused. So they're like really defining what areas do we need to do the research in, what would be the most beneficial for us to do the research in. And there's been relatively few projects in hybridization.
Yeah.
Part of it is it crosses across different disciplines, different areas, and it's not. It takes effort to put a team together that are working in different disciplines, and then to also all speak the same scientific language. That can be quite a challenge. But I think this project has really helped to set a platform of researchers involved in Europe, and I'm hoping we'll get more and more companies like interested and involved in this area later on, because it's kind of it's quite an important effort to make in this area.
Exactly. Thank you. Yeah, I also shared the link of the project. Yes. Thank you, Jacopo. Yeah, this is actually the book that came from the projects. So just acknowledging the work that has been done by the partners in this. Thank you, Jacopo. There's also the link for the InterStore project that Luigi was mentioning on asset management and interoperability of the systems. That's also a very interesting project worth checking out. So I just wrapping up with asking you if you could just very shortly, 30 seconds or so, tell us, okay, what's next in your career about the stationary storage. What are you looking to in the short term? What are the questions you want answer to in the domain that you're working with? Just to see, okay, as you've already explained very well, this is very dynamic, but just to give the audience the sense of what's on your mind in the 3, 6, I don't know, 1 year from now about the developments of the sector. So Jacopo, please, you what's happening there?
Sure. So, I mean, I'm a policy guy, so I just want better policies, but I'm very optimistic for the next 365 days, as you said. I think we're going to see a dramatic improvement on, the European Union, but also the national level legislation. We're going to see better legislation related to the grid, related to all the costs that energy storage incurs. And I hope that, from the crisis that we saw with the blackout in Spain, we're going to have a renewed effort in making sure that there are new system services, for example, related to inertia, related to voltage, and to making sure that, we have a stronger and stronger and more competitive energy system in Europe.
Thank you. Amen. Luigi, please.
From my side, I hope to see more and more batteries wherever we can, and all together working to support the system. So virtual power plant flexibility is something that is in our DNA as an LX Global Retail. and we aim to work in this direction from very short application, fast power intensive application. I'm thinking also to high power charging system for cars, for instance, which need specific technologies for giving this impulse. No, and I hope as well to see what Jacopo just told. No, regulatory framework enabling this technology, enabling also sector like C&I, commercial industrial, to give the contribution as it happened in some other countries, not really well developed again in Europe. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
I guess I can make this pretty quick. I'm a business developer, so I have the joy of working in both the battery and the energy sector. So I will be developing projects that are looking at how this energy system, like on the power electronics for the group that I'm working with, the converters, etc. Like this is a very important part of this. But I'm also, I see that at Syntef here, we're also working quite a lot on the development of the batteries. We have projects that are looking at the second life batteries, like Luigi has been working and has described. There are many opportunities. One of the main things going ahead, and particularly in BATT, will be to identify which opportunities that we should strategically fund. So this is a bit about drilling into looking at the KPIs and seeing what technology can reach what potential. So I think this is quite an important job that needs to be done. But the developments are coming. Many of them have arrived, but getting the whole system to communicate together and getting people to work together, that would be one of my main goals, to try get people to work together, to speak the same scientific language, to understand each other. I think that's really crucial, and that we continue working the way we are. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I hope we meet this time next year and see all those opportunities realized by the utility sector, by the policymakers, by the researchers. So with that, thank you so much. Just a quick, very quick point. I've shared our upcoming events in the chat. So please, we are having a busy June. Feel free to join us if you're BEP. Some of them are reserved for the BEPA members, but some are open. But let me thank our panel. Very fascinating conversation. We touched upon a lot of points, but still a lot of remaining. So hopefully we can continue this conversation and talk about many different aspects of this really interesting sector. Many thanks to all of you. Many thanks for those who joined us today. And with that, I wish you a very good day. Have a good day and thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye. Bye-bye.